This is Smart Marketing Show, episode number 191. How does jazz factor into marketing? Brought to you by ServerPress, Maker's Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at ServerPress.com. Help us out by going over to patreon.com/WPwatercooler, where you can be a patron of our shows. I'm Jason Tucker. I'm an IT director and web developer. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter. This is my friend Bridget Willard. She's a marketing consultant. She can be found at Bridget M. Willard on Twitter. Like us as a podcast. I want you to go over to Apple Podcasts, search for our podcast, Smart Marketing Show, and like and leave a review. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today?
Excellent.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Good to have you all on the show today. Bridget, we are going to be talking about something that I don't know much about, which is music. And I know enough about marketing now to be dangerous. And I hear that we have not just a musician, but also a friend and a family member of a past guest. And we're introducing Paul Tobey. How you doing today, Paul?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. Good to have you. We had your son, Adrian, on the show, talked a bunch about you. Bridget talked a bunch about you and your music and all those sorts of things. And so we wanted to have you come on the show, and you hit us up, and I was like, wow, this is great. Let's talk. And so I'm not a musician, but I understand that there is a tie-in between music and marketing. Where do we start with that in order to be able to come to that conclusion?
So music, I don't know if you know this, but when they did studies at UCLA on how the brain reacts to music. So they did a study, they took 50% of people that were music lovers, and they took 50% who were musicians, and they studied the brains of music lovers as they were listening to music. So they would basically test them, and their brains lit up in several areas. And I'm not going to obviously go into all the details of that, but anyone who is a music lover and listening to music, it fires a lot of the creative energy in your brain, and your brain just tends to light up in many places. Then they did it on musicians while they were playing, and their brains lit up everywhere.
Huh.
So there's this concept of music that involves not only logic and math and understanding all of that, but there's also motor ability, creativity, and just all this stuff going on at one time to be able to produce music is something that the brain just absolutely loves.
And it's a language.
It's a language, that's correct. And marketing is a language. And as someone who runs a digital marketing agency, my ability to orchestrate, because I've actually written 9 symphonies and produced and recorded them, yes, among many other things. But you know, it takes a fair amount of skill to do that, but also a fair amount of creativity.
Understatement. Beethoven over here.
But I know how the flutes sound with the violas, throw the trombones in over here, and I know when and where to bring them in order to mesh those sounds into a decent sounding piece of music. Right. Marketing is very much like that. How do you mesh targeted traffic with a fairly substantially, creative landing page that gets people to take an action, and then follow them through those actions and being able to orchestrate their next, when the next piece happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
And then directing the people within your organization to actually do those things. So, and work with companies, because often what I'll have is companies come in to my facility and they'll bring in their management teams, and I'll be able to help them orchestrate their business and interject marketing into that. So there is a lot of, I think my brain just sort of over the years, because I've been playing musician since music since I was 8 years old, it just kind of got used to a lot going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
nuance, right? So I came to marketing because I had a CD to sell. Ta-da! And I mean,
Great.
musicians always are hawking their wares, right? So, but when we play live, and I'm nowhere near like you, like at all, like I just learned to play chords to accompany my voice in church, of course, but that's a different life. But so what I knew how to read the audience. I knew how to respond live. I knew how to speak to them, to take them where I wanted them to go.
Right.
Using music as the basis of the story that you're telling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the same as marketing. So when Adrian's like, oh, my dad's a jazz musician, I'm like, oh, yeah. Because there's a difference between somebody who just reads and plays and somebody who composes live.
Lives.
Yeah.
Organized
Lives.
chaos.
Yeah.
It was my career for 22, 23 years. I was a
Nice.
recording artist for Arcadia in New York City, and did a lot of touring and made 8 albums and stuff. And I just and people were wondering, well, why am I not doing that anymore? Because there was a transition. I was in my early 40s, and it's such a tough life. Traveling hand to mouth, you make a fair amount of money as a performer, but you also spend a lot of money because you're on the road and you have touring expenses, and it's really not a lot of fun to work with some musicians. And as a leader, that's kind of like HR nightmare. And so a couple of things happened. First, I got tinnitus. Do you know what tinnitus is?
Oh, yes.
ringing
I'm
in
so
the ear.
sorry.
Yeah, which a lot of musicians end up getting. And for me, it was like horrid. And I still have it, by the way, and it's gotten worse over the years. But I kind of learned to deal with that. It's
Gosh, I didn't mean to call you Beethoven.
No, that's
Sorry.
okay. That's okay. And
I'm
the other
good at
thing was
saying
I
no.
was overplaying, so I got tendinitis too. I'm like, I suffer from all the itises. And then sort of 9/11 happened and a bunch of other things. And I just went, okay, reset. And then I had to find out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I really had no idea. I mean, things got so bad actually during that, because I was married and Adrian was very young at the time, like a baby. And I kind of had to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because I don't know anything other than music. That's all I'd ever done. And if you're not touring and you're not making albums and the recording companies lost interest, and that was because of 9/11 anyway, that's a whole other story. But if you don't have the backing of a record company and you've got all these other things going on and you're not playing, you're not making any money.
No, there's no money. Like
There's
I
no
made
money.
my CD literally to sell the music to a record company so somebody else could do all that touring.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know
So-
what I mean? Like, it's hard. It's a
Well,
hard
when you
life.
have a young family and they're relying on you for, they expect you to be a hunter, you go out and catch, shoot a deer or something like that. And, you bring home squirrels. Actually, no, I wasn't even bringing home squirrels. I was bringing home the nuts of the shells, the shells of the nuts the squirrels ate and left behind. That was what that's what I'm bringing home.
Oh my goodness.
And I literally, like, things got so bad, I actually thought about getting a job. But then I thought, okay, well, not most businesses don't need a piano player. And I don't really have any other discernible skills. What the hell am I going to do? Like I went through a couple of years of like depression, because I just, what the heck am I going to do? Right. I didn't know.
You've been doing it since you were 8.
Yeah. And that's all I did. I didn't do anything else. I didn't have any other skills. I went to music school for that. I immediately became a professional musician right through university to pay off my university, but then, just became a professional, and that's all I've ever known. Wow. And so when that's over, it's kind of like, okay, life number 2, but what does that even look like?
You know,
Right.
I'm so glad that you're sharing this part of your story that I didn't realize, because so many of our friends, Jason, like that watch this show, we are second career folks. Like, this is my second career. I changed at 42. At 42 years old, I decided to become a marketer, you know, instead of a secretary. Yeah.
Same time.
And, you know, and we realized, we come into WordPress, we realized, oh, wait, we can use this thing to build something to help people and also make an income and shift our career. So how did you go from, okay, I'm bringing home shells, to I'm packing the freezer? Like, why a marketing agency?
Well, it wasn't a marketing agency. It wasn't a marketing agency. A lot of us fall into that business, and I'll kind of fill in a little bit of the blank. So the first thing was, I kind of had to re-educate myself. But that happened a little bit by accident. My wife actually was watching Oprah one day, and I love my wife, Nancy. She's been with me through all of this since the beginning. And we've been married for 25 years, it'll be 26 years this year.
Happy anniversary.
And of course, Adrian was a great byproduct of that whole relationship, which was kind of cool.
We've all emailed Nancy at one point or another,
right?
Not realizing we were.
I'm sure you have.
Nancy's like, I wanted to be on the show. Everybody else has been on the show.
Yeah, a family affair for sure. But she actually was watching Oprah one day, and there was a guy on there by the name of Gary Zukav, who wrote a bunch of books called. They were based on the soul. They're self-help.
Oh, chicken soup for the.
Yeah, chicken soup kind of books. So they were called the Soul Stories and Seed of the Soul and all this stuff. And at that time, they had a bunch of groups across North America called soul groups. And she reached out. We were living outside Toronto at the time, and she reached out online to see if anybody had one of these groups. And a lady responded. Her name was Lori Rosenfield, and we got invited to a soul group meeting, which I didn't know anything about this. She did it. And she's like, well, you're coming to this meeting. I'm going to fix you, right? Like,
okay,
you need to be fixed, right? So we're going to go to this meeting. So we show up at this house at York Mills in Bayview. And if you know anything about Toronto, Bayview is, well, it's kind of where I live now, but back then it was like the other side of the tracks. Okay. Like one of the most prestigious areas in Toronto next to Rosedale. And we go to this house, and the house was 9,000 square feet. Wow. It wasn't a house. It was a palace.
Right.
In the driveway was, if I can remember, it was a right-hand drive Jensen, which was imported from, wherever. And then he had a couple of Vets, 67 Vet.
Yeah, the 1967 Corvette.
In mint condition. I drove that car. It was crazy. Anyway, so I don't know these people, right? So I drive up in my 1987 Taurus gray station wagon. I swear to God, that car had so many rust spots in it. You could shoot a gun at it and you wouldn't hit anything. It just goes right to the other side. So I was like, oh, okay. Because I didn't really know the area. We lived outside Toronto, and I'm like, and I drove, because it was a dead end street. I drove around the circle, drove back to the end of the road, went down to the next block, parked there, and walked back, because I'm not parking this car anywhere near this house, right? Knock on the door. This little lady, she's like 5'2", Lori Rosenfield, bless her heart. She answers the door. Oh, you must be Paul and Nancy. Come on in. And there's like 25 people there talking about this book called Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav, all from the Oprah thing. And they knew all about it. And I didn't know anything. I hadn't read the book. I didn't know Gary Zukav from a hole in the wall. All I know is my wife dragged me here, right? So I sit in the meeting, and I'm an angry jazz musician by this. I'm not making it. I'm just like, this is all bullshit, right? Like, so I'll just sit there and I'll wait for the food, right? So I waited till the meeting was over, and I grabbed some free food. And honest to God, I mean, the ceilings were like 20 feet high. This place was just crazy beautiful.
The heating bill, man.
I had never been in a mansion before, ever in my life. I mean, I'm a preacher's kid. I'm from like the other side of the world.
Right.
So after the meeting, this is how it happened. This is literally how it happened. After the meeting, I'm standing against the wall, minding my own business, not talking to anybody, because I don't know anything about any of this, right? I'm not a spiritual person. I'm a jazz musician. I'm Christian by nature, but I don't get anything that they're talking about. I'm standing by the wall eating free food. And Lori Rosenfield, the little 5'2" lady, she comes and she looks up at me and she goes, this is what she says. She goes, "You must be Paul." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "What's your problem?"
Oh, wow.
Really?
I'm like, my wife brought me here. I'm just here for the food. Thank you so much. It's been great. I don't know anything about what you guys are talking about. She goes, "Okay, come with me." She literally grabs my hand and she takes me into the library. Who the hell has a library? Like, do you know anybody that has a library? She's got, one of those things that goes around the walls, that the
stairs?
The ladder that goes around.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
And
the
this place
ladder.
is just packed with books, right? She takes me in there and I'm like, "What are we doing?" She goes, "Shh, I'm thinking." So she takes about 10 minutes and she goes around. And finally she lands on this little book and she reaches up onto the shelf. She didn't need a ladder. It was kind of on one of the lower shelves. She grabs this book. It's a really small book. I think she thought I was stupid or something. So she literally says, "Put out your hand." So I put out my hand and she takes the book. I don't have one of my books here, but anyway, she takes the book, she puts it in my hand and she puts her hand on top of the book and her other hand up behind like this. And she goes, "Okay, here's the deal. I really like your wife. She's awesome. You, I don't know anything. I'm not too sure about you. And I'd love her to come back, but you can't come back until you read this book."
Damn.
Huh.
She's got some hushpa.
And I'm like, and she goes, "I know you're coming back." And I go, "How do you know that?" And she goes, "Because I want my book back."
Oh, wow.
The first rule of sales is put the product in your hand.
She's like, "I want my book back." I'm like, "Okay. What did I have to lose?" I mean, what do I know? I mean, they all seemed happy. I wasn't. So I went home and I read it. Took like 2 hours. I'm a smart guy, right? It doesn't take long. I'm educated. I read the book. So it was called The Alchemist, which is a very massively popular book by a guy by the name of Paulo Coelho, who is a spiritual sort of guru out of South America, Brazil. And all the books have been translated into English, and there's a number of them. I've read most of them. And that was sort of the beginning of, okay, there's a life I could have if I just understood the rules.
Not unlike
And nobody
music.
had given me any other rule book. They don't give you a rule book in public school. They don't give you, they train you to be soldiers, right? Which is
Definitely not jazz.
Our school system, by the way, came from early Germany in Prussia, where we got our school system from, where they trained people to be soldiers. So they put them into kindergarten and they basically, at the age of 5, and they train them to be soldiers. That system hasn't changed. You can either be a soldier in an army or you can be a soldier in the workforce. And that's what they teach you. And that's what they taught me through all of that. And that's the family that I came from. So there's actually another rule book that exists that is, kind of based on universal law. What are the laws of the universe that can help you get what you want?
Right.
So I read this book and then I went back the next week and she gave me another book. I read that. I went back the next week. She gave me another book and I went through this whole, James Redfield and, just all of this stuff. Right. And about 30 books in.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm dedicated now, right? I'm like,
apparently,
I have to get through this, and I'm starting to feel better about myself. I'm still not producing anything, which is kind of like a lot of spiritually based people really feel happy about absolutely nothing, right? I don't need anything. I don't need anyone. I'm just I'm gonna exist, and I'm gonna put out energy, and I'll be a frequency holder for everybody else. I didn't want to be a frequency holder. I wanted to be a producer, right? I got a family to feed. Finally, on the 30th week or so, I get this book. Same guy, by the way, Paulo Coelho. She gives me another book. She goes, "I think you're ready for this." It's called The Pilgrimage. And it's a book about Paulo Coelho himself going in search of his spiritual sword, which was a true story, and writing about it in this book. And it's actually a place on the planet called the Camino de Santiago. It's in Spain.
Oh, the big walk they all do.
The big walk they all do.
Carrie Dillis did that. Remember, Jason?
Yeah.
My cousin did it too.
So did Adrian.
Are you
So
really?
so did
serious?
I. So I went by myself.
did?
Like Adrian was really young, but I've been twice.
Wow.
Dang.
So I went and I did this journey. It's like 1,000 kilometers, right? But I couldn't afford to go, so I got a grant from the Canadian government, Canada Council for the Arts, to write music, which is where the 9 symphonies came from. I wrote them all based on the Camino de Santiago.
Oh wow.
And I came back from that. After that, I honestly, just a blur. It just everything just kind of went crazy. Like I came back, started taking courses on how to do public speaking. I now have trained over 500 public speakers myself because I made a lot of money doing that. I used to make,
Whoa.
I used to go into a hotel. I'd book a hotel room out. I'd go in there. I'd talk about, digital marketing or public speaking or whatever for a couple hours. And then I'd upsell them to like a $3,000 course in 2 hours. And I still remember the day I made my first $75,000. Like I realized to a lot of you that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but
Sounds like a lot to me.
to a broke jazz musician, that was like dying and going to like, golden heaven. That was like,
Right.
Yeah, you know that jazz joke, Paul. How do you make a jazz musician a millionaire? Give him $1 million.
no, that's not it. You're close. It's like, how does a jazz musician make $1 million? He said he started with 2 million.
Oh.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's a passion.
I know all the jazz musician jokes, so you can't. Yeah.
Hey, I love jazz. That's my.
Yeah. There's a good jazz trombone line. Have you heard it? Yeah, it goes like this. You want fries with that? Okay. So to make a really long story short, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on, I became basically a speaker who would give professional development and personal development courses, because of course I'm learning all about that, right? And I would host hotel, and at 1 year I did 120 of these in 1 year.
Wow.
Like literally. And people would come, 50 to 200 people a time. I'd convert 10 to 15% of the audience into a course. And then on the back end of that course, I'd convert them into another course and whatever. And I, eventually built this whole facility that's behind me, which is a whole live stream studio. But then what happened was, digital marketing, because that was our most popular subject, all the businesses wanted to know, right? How do I make this work for my business? Everybody wants a website and they need more than a brochure and, the whole 9 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? And they would come and they would pay to take these courses, like lots of money, $2,000 for a couple of days. And then some would do 5 days. That'd be like $5,000. And some of them bought Universal. That'd be $25,000. And we did, honestly, I'm not saying this to impress you. I'm saying this to impress upon you. We did better than I ever thought I would.
Wow.
But the problem is that it got so complicated, right? With CRM and SEO became more complicated. Website technology became more complicated.
Sure.
And you'd give them all this information. And then 6 months later, they'd go, it's not working for me. Well, what did you do? Well, I didn't really, I have to come back and do it again. And I just don't have time for that, right? So we looked at all the money we were leaving on the table and we just said, okay, what if we built an agency that just did it for them?
Okay.
And
Musician, speaker. Oh, wait, you don't know how to do your website to promote your business? So it was like putting yourself in that world of opportunities, but being willing to learn.
Right.
Teachable.
I'm a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all.
Ooh, I like that.
That's how it happened. And that's what Adrian's like too. Adrian grew up during that time. Adrian does not know what poverty is, because he became part of that growth period for me and my wife.
Yeah.
Because for us, it was all new, right? What do we know about business? We built a business. I had to start a business. No, I'm not hireable.
Right.
So learning all of that and succeeding in many ways, obviously we have other expectations of things we would have liked to have done that didn't pan out. We've made mistakes. I'm not saying it was all easy. Honestly, I would go into a room of like 100 people one time and come up with 0. Like that's just a bad day. You know what I mean? But then other days you've got 20 people and you come up with, $50,000. It's just, It's just the nature of that business, right?
So, sorry, so now I'm like, okay, I know a lot of our audience are introverts. And like for me, I'm introverted, meaning like I need time away from people. I'm totally fine being by myself for about 3 days. And then if Rhonda texts me, let's go to lunch, I'm all over it like flying flypaper, right?
Mhm.
But I have zero problem speaking in public.
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who like they realize they do need to speak more to establish themselves as that expert in their field?
Mhm.
Like, since that's your field of expertise, I would love a couple of tips we could share with our audience.
Well, first of all, jazz musicians are the ultimate introverts. They lock themselves in practice rooms all day long and they bow and accept applause, but they don't really say anything. They just introduce the next song. So this next song is like, Straight Note Chaser. And, it's going to feature this solo by this guy. And that's all they say. They don't really know anything other than that. And that was me. I knew how to bow, but I didn't know how to speak. So the best advice that I could give is go get trained. And that's what I did. I spent, I've had 9 different public speaking teachers and trainers over the years.
Wow.
9, not 1, 9. And some pretty impressive people. Like I remember taking courses with Harv Eker. Harv would make $2.5 million in a weekend. Like he would roll into like Montreal at Place des Arts, and he'd fill a room full of 2,500 people, and they would rush to the back of the room, just like I did, to buy their courses. A lot of them didn't have the wherewithal to succeed, but they liked the energy and all of that. My thing was different. I don't have a lot of money to spend. I remember calling my dad. Here's what you don't want to do. Okay. So, I hope you've got some advice from that, but
get trained.
I didn't have any money when I came back from Santiago de Compostela. I spent all the grant money. I still had to write the music. I still had to fulfill the terms of the grant. I'm still not working.
Right.
So I go to this seminar in the fall of the year that I came back, which was basically the fall of 2004. And when they offered this, because they basically said, okay, it was a 3-day conference. I came in the back of the room. It was free. There was free tickets in the book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. I came in as a really angry jazz musician, sat in the back row. I was less angry than I was, before I met Laurie Rosenfield, but I'm sitting in the back row thinking, okay, I'll duck out at the first opportunity, right? I'll just sit in the back, right? In 3 days, I was sitting in the front row. And I thought, if they can do that to me, right? If they can pull me into the front row in 3 days, me, a very judgmental, I'm kind of open at this time, but very skeptical about pretty much everything because I'm broke. Mm-hmm. Everyone who's broke is skeptical, right? The course is $3,500. If you pay $3,000 today, you can save $500 and we'll see you next spring or whatever it was. Ended up being in Vancouver, I think. I didn't have the money. And this is what you don't want to do when you're 42 years old, right? You don't want to go into the lobby. Nobody has a cell phone at this time, but you don't go into the lobby and pick up a phone and you don't call your dad because that's like the worst feeling, right? I need $3,000. I'm going to call my dad, right? But I had no choice. I don't have any room on my credit cards. And I'm just really like, if they can do that to me, there's something they don't know. They know that I don't know. There's just something they know that I don't know. And I couldn't figure it out. I just like, what do these guys know that's making this happen, making people spend all this money, making me want to spend money?
So you weren't like, this is total bullshit.
Not by the end. I was in the beginning, but by the end, I was like, okay, they know something. I don't know what it is. I'm going to figure it out. Right? I don't know how to orchestrate for 75 musicians. I'll go learn how to do that and I'll figure it out. Right. And that's the way I've led my life. Right. So I go and I call my dad. I said, Dad, you're not going to want to hear this, but I need you to run down to the bank and pay off one of my credit cards. He goes, is this another one of your harebrained schemes? It's like, and I'm like, no, Dad, I'm going to pay you back. I just feel in my gut that this is the thing I want to do. Can you help me out? And half an hour later, he had gone to the bank, which was close to his house, and he paid off one of my credit cards. It didn't pay it off. He put $3,000 on it, and I went and I paid for the course. I went to that course, and it was 5 days. And I kind of learned, I learned a lot about what speakers do and what they don't do, what you should not do, which was most of the things that I was doing. Most of all, I learned how to make an offer. Like, how do you actually make an offer? And we learned that for landing pages. We learned that for it, but not for speaking. It's like, how do you make an offer from the stage, right? In my first year as a speaker, and I'm not saying this again to impress you. I'm saying this is the God's honest truth. I did $168,000 in sales in year one.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
From zero, like literally from zero. I joined the Arts and Letters Club in Toronto because I'm a musician, because I could rent the room for $50. And I started there. And I called it success tracks for artists. And I would help musicians understand how to get a website together, or how to maybe get a recording contract, all the things that I knew how to do that most people don't know how.
So you started with what?
I started with artists. I started with what I knew. I didn't start with what I didn't know. I couldn't teach people to public speak. I couldn't teach them about business. I couldn't help them with that. I don't know anything about that. And that was one of the things I did learn in the course. It's like, if you're going to help people, make sure you've done it before.
Right.
Right.
And that's the rules that I've always followed. I don't give advice to anyone. If somebody asks me something I don't know anything about, I say, hey, listen, there's a lot of things I don't know anything about than the things I actually know. The good news is I won't tell you what those are. Those are just opinions. Those don't matter to anybody. But if you've got success at something, you have a duty and a responsibility to teach it to somebody else. And Adrian, funnily enough, grew up in the back of those rooms.
No wonder why he's so charismatic.
He grew up in the back of those rooms. He would sit at the sales table and he would take orders from people that were, 3 times his age, and they're plunking down credit cards, and, he would do setup and tear down, and he was there the whole time. And he learned a lot about success and a lot about, whatever. But you can see that in Adrian, right? He's just alive. Adrian's just there's a spark about Adrian that's just so infectious, but that's the environment that he grew up in. Me, that was my learning environment. For Adrian, it was his whole environment. As a kid, you don't know the difference between what's good for you and what's not. You just live what your parents are. You just become a direct extension of what they live.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not really talking a lot about WordPress here. Do you want to talk about WordPress?
But that's the thing. It's like, okay, so we know from Adrian's interviews, you have a very successful agency, and it was that environment, like him growing up in an incubator, basically, that made him fearless.
Good word for it.
So because some of us are just like, people always ask me like, well, how do you, like, they say you're so strong or whatever. That's what my name means, but I never felt strong. I just felt like I didn't have another choice.
Bridget means strong?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
what does Jason mean?
He's
the guy that throws rocks.
At the strong people.
I don't know about Adrian, but I'm named after Saint Bridget, the patron saint for the poets and healers of Ireland. I'm Irish. So, and anyway, but I would be like, well, I don't have another choice. I know what you could do. You could pivot. You can do something else. You can build whatever. Like, I'm a forward moving person, but that was always driven by fear. So like having that ability to just transform is a lot of us in the WordPress world. I mean, that's why we're talking about marketing, not like how to build a website. Our audience knows how to build a website, right?
Yeah. We're not here for that.
No, but the thing is, a lot of times what our audience struggles with, especially for their own business, right, Jason, is how do you make that pitch? Now, in our culture in WordPress, when we talk at WordCamps, we're not allowed to pitch our services.
No, I spoke at WordCamp a couple of times. I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah. So that is we're not actually getting that incubator in that way. We're encouraged to give back. Like you said, if you have a success, it's your duty to teach others. In open source and WordPress, we believe in that strongly, but we don't believe in pitching our own services, which is fine in the context of a WordCamp, but not fine in the context of your life, right? Where every landing page should have a call to action, your pricing, and everything like that should be there. So having that, having that practice, understanding the circle of FIS allows you to understand how to move around, in the confines of the key you're in, right? I mean, like that's the whole foundation of jazz. Like I've always been fascinated with people who can just compose like that. So, and this is the thing, and this is why I thought it'd be such a great topic, Paul, because most WordPress developers are engineers, and engineers a lot of times are musicians. And I would say that a good 80% of our audience have music as part of their life. And for them to tap into that performer, that person who plays a song and wants people to sing along, that chorus is a call to action.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't want people to think that I'm just, the whole concept of jazz musician, there's different levels of musicianship. So if anybody wants to like verify that, just do a Google search for Paul Tobey and then put the words Muse score and Spain beside it. Because I recently re-recorded Chicory's Spain because he died, and so just go check that out, right? Or look up anything by Paul Tobey just to verify that. Because I think it's important to understand that, to me, that was my whole life. Just like to an engineer, it's their whole life. Just to a WordPresser, it's their whole life. But what I did not understand, okay, was you can have all the talent and the knowledge and the experience on the planet at the application of your craft. But if you don't know how to sell it, which is the number one thing a business needs to do to bring in revenue, you need to sell something. This is what I learned from Harv's people. It's like, what's the number one thing you need to do in business to be successful? And the answer is sell. People have to pay money in order for your business to thrive. And those are the rules of the music business I did not understand. I thought that was the record company's job. But no, it was my job. That's the difference between, so the most CDs I ever sold when I was actually a full-time musician was I sold 40 CDs at one time. I played for 1,000 people in Yokohama, Japan for the jazz festival. They love jazz. And so they bought 40 albums. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Then after I took this course from Harv's people, the course that I told you about that I paid $3,000 for, I actually did a concert a few years later, like a concert, and 1,000 people showed up. I sold 422 CDs in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Because I knew how to make an offer. Do you want to hear it? You want to hear what the offer was?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
this was my offer. Okay. So, by the way, most of the time musicians go at the end of the gig, they go, yeah, Sally's sitting in the back there. She's got a bunch of CDs there. And if you don't buy one, I don't eat tomorrow. Anyway, thanks. We'll see y'all next time. That's kind of how musicians do their thing.
Yeah.
So the first thing I learned from Harv's people was like, don't make the offer at the end. People are like, I got to get home. I've got kids to feed. I've got things to do, right? Don't make it at the end. Make it halfway through or make it 3/4 of the way through. And I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. So I did it at intermission. And I basically went like this. It's like, how many of you, and I learned, all this stuff, right? How many of you enjoyed some or most of the music from the first half? And everybody just clapped. There was like, wow, that was amazing. And I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. I just recorded all of the music that you just heard on this brand new CD. It's called, Paul Tobey, whatever the hell it was. I can't remember what it was. I've done a lot of albums. I was like, and if you buy this, so here's the problem. I've only got 100 of them. It's just hot off the presses. It actually literally showed up on the gig and it was shrink wrapped. It was still hot when you opened the box.
Scarcity.
Steam came out of the box. I got 100 of these. If you hurry into the lobby, I have this other CD that I made a couple of years ago that I still have a bunch of. If you buy this one, we'll give you this one for free. And everyone got up and went, boom. And out in the lobby, I didn't have Sally sitting at the little table. Sally wouldn't be able to handle that, right? I had 15 people.
So
And
be ready for the sales.
five of them came around to the front of the table and acted like purchasers. So when the first people got there, they thought, oh God, I'm already late. And people started throwing money over the heads of other people. That table, I took a peek, and I didn't go out in the lobby, but I took a peek, right? And people were fighting to give cash to the people at the table. And they were buying not one CD, they were buying 5. Because if they bought 5, they get 5 for free. And they're like, here's my Christmas presents. It was crazy. Wow. I sold 422 CDs in 10 minutes.
Okay, so you have to demonstrate some of your work. So I'm going to see if I can distill this, if you don't mind. So number one, you need a portfolio, right? You need to be able to show what you did, and like that.
More than that, you need proof.
Well, proof. That's what I'm saying. The actual we're building websites. So what I would call it a case study, right, Jason?
Right.
Yeah. This is what was happening before. This is what it happened. This is what I did. It's proof. It's, it's in the context of music, they heard you. So you need a case study. You need to have the offer in the case study. You need to bring them to a landing page that has like some kind of deal. And then you need to like have that pop up. Wasn't it Scott that made Hollerbox? Is that Hollerbox still alive? That says so and so just bought this, so and so.
It's a FOMO.
Oh yeah, FOMO proof pop up. We have that with Groundhog.
FOMO. It's the FOMO and the scarcity. Like there's only this much available, and if you do this, it's that. It's stuff that like is completely intuitive to me, but like that is not what WordPressers like to do because they're afraid of selling themselves.
It's not intuitive for almost everyone.
No,
if it's intuitive for you, you've been blessed. But for most people, so there's that, but then there's an actual order that it should come in. And the order that it comes in is the most powerful part. So when I made an offer at the back end of my seminars, I would go through this entire template, right? This entire, like from A to Z. In the initial stages, I had, cheat sheets and notes and stuff, and then I just kind of remembered it. But it's basically, there's a transition period between information, there's problem, then solution, and then can I tell you a little bit about it? Name of product, who's it for? 5 things about what it does and why you need that, and then maybe another 5 things of this, and then you have testimonials, and then you have deal, bonus, limitation, guarantee, call to action, forms of payment. There's this whole template that has to come in the right order. I was floored when that used to work. I was like, I would do these seminars and people would like buy stuff, and I'd be like, why didn't they teach me this in school? Why didn't they? Does everybody know this stuff? And it turns out most people don't know this stuff. I didn't know this stuff. I had to pay for that information. And that's one of the things that I had learned in those first few years. I used to take, this is a great strategy, by the way, take 3% of next year's income, not this year's. So if my income is 168,000 and I want to double that, that's 336. If I want to make $336,000 next year, take 3% of that and invest it in the number one resource on planet Earth that you have complete control over. Yourself.
You mean not the stock market?
Not the stock market. I mean, that's another strategy, but there's one resource on planet Earth that you have absolute control over, and that is you. If you invest that money in yourself with knowledge and experience from people who've already made all the mistakes, no matter what that costs, as long as they have enough proof, and you implement their strategies, they're not all going to work, but a good portion of them will. And that's what I did. I would take, and I did that for like the first 5 years until I got to.
So you budgeted.
I got to 7 figures pretty quickly, and then I went, okay, I don't really need any more help.
You budgeted for your education.
I did, but I spent more on myself than I probably needed to, but I'm glad that I did, because I skipped a lot of steps that most people have to go through. I skipped. You see, the number one learning strategy is trial and error. It's extremely popular. Okay. And the reason why it's extremely popular is because it's free.
Yeah.
But it's also the least effective for two reasons. One, you tend to make a lot of error. But two, you tend to repeat those same errors over and over again because you don't actually know
that it's an error.
And
those are expensive mistakes.
They can be lifetime mistakes. I think of 23 years in the music business, hand to mouth. And I'm thinking, Jesus, that was a lot of time to waste. All I needed was the right rule book. Right. And listen, I'm not, please understand me. I'm not saying I'm the most successful person. I'm certainly far from it. I got a lot further than I thought I would. But my point is that I did one thing that most people typically aren't willing to do. Do you know that 51% of North Americans have not read a nonfiction book past high school?
What?
Yep.
That's all I do is read nonfiction. I had to make myself read.
You and I are not average. We're not average. I know you read.
I listened to it.
I've also written my own books, and I could hold them up too. But that's not.
No,
really
this is Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, that's fiction.
Or To the Look. That's what I'm saying. This is the first. These are the. I mean, I don't read fiction.
I know. So my point is that half of our population thinks I got all they needed from high school teachers.
Far from it. I can tell you, I have never said that.
No, I'm not saying that's what they think, but that's what's happened.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean? Like if that, and that's the actual number, right? Studies,
right.
51% of North Americans, including Canada and the United States, have not read a nonfiction book past high school.
Wow.
And, with the initial 30 books that Lori had given me, and then going and walking to Camino Santiago, and then starting to invest in seminars and in conferences and things like that. And I'm a big spender over the years. I'm not suggesting that that's the answer, but what I am saying is that was the answer for me. I don't know how to do stuff, and I don't have the rest of my life to figure it out. I'm 40. I've got a family to feed. I'm looking for a lifestyle business where I don't have to worry about bills, and I don't have to worry about, whatever. I made a video this morning actually for Adrian on how you can make money as a Groundhog certified partner. Right? Because we have certified partners, and I'm a certified partner. I use Groundhog with 90% of my clients. How do I do it from my clients? And part of what I did was I opened up my QuickBooks and I showed them some accounting and how we charge our clients and all that kind of stuff and how we utilize Groundhog in the business. And as I was doing that, I realized that information for a certified partner is probably a window just opening up, that they're going to say to themselves, okay, I can make money doing that, but then what's going to happen is they're not going to get help. They're just going to try to figure it out. It's like, oh, Paul Tobey can do it. I'll just figure it out. I remember once, very close to the end of my music career, well, actually at the end, when money ran out, and I'm at the grocery store, and I'm literally counting the groceries on the conveyor belt, and thinking, and my fingers are crossed like this, hoping that my debit card will actually work. Like I'm just literally like, and then it goes insufficient funds. And then everybody in the line behind you just goes, oh. They're just like, who the hell is this guy? Right. And then you go, okay, well, you just take this back. And then, okay, take this back. Let's try the card again. And then you hope it'll work the second time. I didn't want to live the rest of my life like that. And as I was making the video this morning, I kind of hinted at, okay, I just want a lifestyle business where I don't have to worry about that. I can have a nice house. I can have a decent car, all the things that I didn't have. And then I thought about other things that I've been able to do, like a country club membership. And I won't even go into the stuff. And I started thinking about that. And I really want whoever's listening to this, if you want those things, right? You can have those things, but you need to go to somebody who already has those things, and you need to ask them how they did it. And most people won't do that, because we were trained in school not to do that. What happened in school when you asked for help? You got in trouble. No, you got in trouble. It's
That
like
too.
you're taking a test, right? Hey, Danny, what's the answer to, question 3? And he'd go C. If that happened in an exam, you got in trouble for that.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to ask for help. But in real life, cheating is the only way to get by. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a full-time cheater. I cheat in life all the time. What do? I go to somebody who's got that. You have that. You did that. You've owned that. You've created that. And I don't know how to do that. I will pay for that.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great segue to the tooler tip of the week. Holy crap. We got more than what we bargained for having you on the show, Paul.
Definitely.
I don't even know what would happen if we had Nancy on.
Oh, you don't even want to go there. Oh my God.
So mine is, I probably shared it before, but I just use it again. It's brandcrowd.com. It's an AI. I know I have my own mixed feelings about AI because it's kind of trying to take over my life work, which is copywriting, but that's fine. Anyway, this is a way to get a logo. And if you don't mind arguing over the phone with the person you're partnering with in Germany for I don't know, every single logo that you ever thought would be good. And it's a Rorschach test. If it's just you and you're making your own decisions, pretty easy. You can change the colors and all that stuff. I've used it for Launch with Words. I used it for how to get paid. And I just used it for yoursmallbizmarketing.com, which is something Lauren Lane Nida and I are doing together to kind of do the yin and yang of, he builds websites and SEO and stuff. And people ask me if I build websites and I don't, and he doesn't manage social media. So it's kind of like going together. But what I really like about the brand crowd is that you can change the colors. You could be like, okay, I like that, but I don't like the fonts. You can change the font stylings. And then the cool thing is if you want to use it the way it is, you can buy it for $35, $20, whatever it is. But if you want to take it off the shelf, it's $160. It's a lot cheaper than Rhonda. Sorry, Rhonda. But it's a place to start. When you want to get somebody that redoes your logo and you have the money to invest in that next rebranding, then do that, right? But if you just need something to go and, you can't build a landing page without a logo and, don't do it in Paint. I mean, what are you doing in Microsoft Word or Publisher trying to make a logo? Just spend $160, get it done, look professional. And actually, there was a client of mine who did it that way for this little kind of side business of theirs. And it was just so horrible. I hated it so much. I was like, I will pay for this. But no, they hired an agency that did it. So I got a good Twitter logo. You know me, I want a good Twitter logo. And our clicks and everything is green arrows because now they see something they trust. This is why a logo is super important. So even if, green arrows all over the place, my client is ridiculously happy. And I was like, it's going to happen in October, but whatever, sometimes it takes people, but it's just like Paul said, you have to spend money to make money. There's a certain level you have to just get in as basic. And then once you get money in the door, then you can hire somebody that's a professional to fix it for you, to do it right, to do the things that make it that much better. But for us in WordPress, and doing things for our clients, we don't like what their logo is, just add $200 more to your website package and, use Brand Crowd and just get something in there that's better, and then you get all the files, EPS, AI, PDF, and then you can, and once you buy it and take it off the shelf, you can make as many versions of it that you want, black and white, with the text, without the text. It's totally worth $200. I didn't even think about it. I got my credit card out for my business and, you're going to spend money on your business or you're going to pay it in taxes. So brandcrowd.com. That should be their tagline, but they didn't ask me.
How about you, Paul? What do you got for a tour tip?
So we talked about this before. I wasn't actually ready when I came on. So I just start thinking, okay, what's actually worked for my clients? And one of the things that worked really well was we have this clinic who specializes in brain therapy for concussion patients, which is a huge exploding industry. The amount of cars creates a lot of brain injury, and it's very hard to recover from that. And we always built their website on WordPress. They're a Groundhog user. So what I did was I used a product called Thrive Themes Quiz Builder. I'm pretty sure everybody here is familiar with Thrive, and some people have used Quiz Builder. But one of the unique things that we did was if you searched on Google for free online concussion test, or in Canada, if they just search for concussion test, we're number one. I think we did this before we started, and it also showed up number one for you. And it basically comes to this page, which is very little branding. It just says Brain Therapy Clinic. There's no content. If you actually scroll on this page, there's absolutely no content. And all of the SEO experts out there are saying, how did you rank this number one? Like there's no content. Like, how did you do that? I can answer that question if you want. But anyway, what this does is you answer this, and then there's an opt-in gate to actually get the results. 30 questions in, most people give their email address because they just spent a lot of time answering all these questions about rating their symptoms. And then based on whether they passed or failed or get moderate symptoms, then there's a follow-up campaign through Groundhog that actually gets them to, a consult. Now, we can't take everybody because they have to be able to get to the clinic, which is like 150, 150 kilometers max, I think. So what we do is, I think what I wanted to mention is, because we rank really well, this gets 3,000 leads a month.
3,000?
Jeez.
Oh
most of which we can't handle, but we give them online resources and stuff that can, get them to the right doctor and get them the help that they need. But essentially it's a massive generator, because the reason why it works so well is because there's no sales. We don't pitch anything. We're just like, okay, take this test and get your answer. And then what we do is we just follow up with email. It's like, you failed this test. You are in real trouble of, like, there's a lot of things that could happen, vertigo and all of these things that you complained about that just aren't going to get better. So they make free appointments online. They book a 15-minute, Zoom call or whatever, and then he converts them into clients from there. So yeah, Thrive Quiz Builder. It's a unique use of it, but it works really well.
Oh yeah,
Like I've seen people.
I was already.
I've seen people build some crazy stuff with things that have nothing to do with what they were supposed to be built with. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, as long as it puts the boxes where it needs to go and it gives you a hook that you could tie into, and your other system can pick it up and run with it, then I think it's a great use of the product. So that's awesome. And I echo what you were saying regarding if you get somebody to get through those questions long enough, once you get to a certain point, there is almost like a point of no return where you're like, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well continue to do it.
I just spent 5 minutes doing this. I want my answer.
Yeah,
my answer.
I will say the only thing I don't like is when those questions keep asking the same question and they just kind of change one word in the middle of it, and it's like, okay, I'm done. I know what you're trying to do here. Nope, yeah. I'm good. So yeah, if you build those questions the right way and make
I didn't build the questions. The doctors did. So
right.
It's not. I had nothing to do with that. I just put it in this form. I asked them to make the quiz for me. Like, what do I know about concussion? I don't know anything.
Sure.
But there are standard tests like that for depression.
Yep.
And because I have to take it all the time with my doctor. And I'm like, yeah, I only scored 5 instead of 14, but that is a really good way for mental health clinics.
Oh yeah.
And all that stuff.
I'm not sure, estimate digital marketing. I'm not even sure if this page is still running.
Here's my tour tip. So my tour tip is an app for your iPhone called Picture This.
Okay.
And what you use this for has nothing to do with WordPress, because I've been on that kick right now of here's everything but what this thing does is you go to this you load up this app, you point this at a plant, and then it will tell you all the information about that plant. It actually gives you all the information from it, pulling in from their database, gives you all the cool information regarding that plant. When you should plant it, how you should feed it, how you should water it, how you should, any of those sorts of things. My wife and I have been using it quite a bit in order to kind of figure out what's going on with the house that we moved into, and just trying to figure out what's up with our plants and what's up with the things that are here. And we're liking it. It's great. It's well worth it. It's free to download. There is a paid subscription to it. And there's multiple tiers of that paid subscription. But it's definitely something for you to take a look at. And if you're interested in it, you should take a look at it and see if it'll work for you.
So it identifies plants, but does it tell you like, if it will grow well where you are?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It totally will. Yes. Yep. It bases on the climate that you're in and all that sort of thing. Yep.
Okay.
It's good stuff. So take a look at it. It is, I think it's like $30 a year or something. But if you have a lot of plants, and we have a lot of plants on our property, it's like, okay, well, here's a great way to figure it out.
Nice.
Well, that about wraps it up.
Great.
Paul, I want to say thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to have you on, and we're running out of Tobeys to have on our show, but
maybe next time we'll talk a little more about WordPress or something. I don't know.
Hey, maybe, why not? Well, thank you very much. You have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later. Here's our outro. Subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. If you use an Overcast like I do, you can go take a look at Overcast and do that as well. And subscribe to us on YouTube. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.